Welcome to another episode of Management Muse. I'm your host, Cindi Baldi, and this is my husband and co-host, Jeffrey Tumlin.
Yellow! Welcome to the podcast where we try to inspire better work performance. Thanks for listening.
Hey everyone, exciting news. I am here to unveil, ta-da, the Uncertainty Playbook. Written by Jeffrey Tumlin and Cindi Baldi, it's 14 strategies for work success in a chaotic world. We know that most people aren't very good with uncertainty, and so we combed through the research and ran some experiments in our own work and came up with these 14 strategies that we think could be really helpful for helping you all survive uncertainty and coming out on top. If you're interested in buying the book, it's available on our websites, managementmuse.com and ondemandleadership.com. You can get 20% off if you use the promo code Playbook20. That will get you 20% off and free shipping. So stop on by, and we're wishing you some good reading. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today on Management Muse. I'm your host, Cindi Baldi, and my co-host is Jeffrey Tumlin.
Yeah.
And today we are going to talk about behaviors you need to lose.
That's right. How something that used to work doesn't. We're always asking ourselves, is this actually still working? And it's a very difficult question that we hit on in coaching of trying to alert people that what they used to do that they were successful isn't working anymore. And so we have many examples, but one of the biggest that happens all the time for us is people rise to a certain level in organizations because of their ability to kick butt and take names. And then they get to the senior sanctum and you have to basically, I'll exaggerate to make a point, but basically you have to transform from kicking butt and taking names to kissing babies and changing diapers and thinking strategically.
But I think the difference is that for a lot of the jobs in an organization, you're mostly operating as an individual. And I think in just like your everyday life, when you're by yourself, just operating as an individual, you can knock a lot of stuff out. You invite one person to dinner with you and you're going to get slowed down. You invite 4 people to dinner.
Yeah.
You may be eating at 9 o'clock at night when you like to eat at 5 and you're going to, a Thai restaurant when you're allergic to peanuts.
Sure.
So as you move up, you have more people that you have to actually consider. And so that means that your behaviors actually can't be the same. You're not going to be able to just knock things out. You have to do some of the other skills that are more influence and cooperation that you probably didn't have to rely on as much. I'm not saying that other positions are devoid of it. It's just, you just don't have to do as much because 90% of your job is actually about you being an individual.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. We spend a lot of our time trying to convince fast movers and hard chargers,
which are usually the people who get promoted.
Yep.
At least in our experience with the organizations we're in.
Yeah. To develop what we call strategic patience, which is another way of saying slow down. And it's very hard because we're telling them to do something different, slow down. We're just using this as an example. We'll populate many more, but this is a common one.
There are many others.
Yeah. We're telling them to slow down at a time when they're acutely aware of, I'm in a new job, this is a big job, I want to do this right. And they have decades of accumulated evidence that what they used to do, hard charging, works. And now we're in the unenviable position But it's our job, we're brought in cases like this as coaches to help them actually stop at full speed and move to 3/4 speed and begin doing more deliberation.
Right, because it's not that we're telling them to slow down their job. It's that we're telling them that it's not about completing a task, that as you rise up in the organization, you have to be able to do more with people. So it's still a lot of work. We're not telling them to like slack off and eat bonbons at home. We're saying like, look, you're going to have to talk to your peers, and you're going to have to get them on the same page as you. And that means that there's time taken out where you're not going to be necessarily doing a task in the traditional sense. It's still a task, but it feels much more relational as you move up in the organization. Like there are two big changes. More relational because you have more people who are working underneath you. Less task because the people below you are the ones who are doing like a lot of the tasks. It's also different tasks, but the stuff where you just go in all day and do like the same thing, that's more frontline. And then you have to be able to deal more with the abstract, which means like more conversations, just even brainstorming and like researching and gathering evidence to try to think about what the organization needs to do to be successful today and in the future. And those are very different skill sets, which means that what you used to do in the past, it could actually be a barrier to your success.
Yes. And you're looking at it with a track record of all of that working for you at a time when you're nervous.
And you want to be successful.
That's right. Yeah. And so it's a difficult transition to make, but there's a lot of warning signs that you're getting off the rails. I mean, you're going to be getting input from your environment that in many cases that look like, what are you doing? Why are you still pushing this hard? Why are you moving this fast in this particular case? Why are you still doing this work when you should be delegating it?
That's a big one.
And then, why aren't you devoting the time you need to the relational parts of the job? When was the last time you talked to your board of directors? When was the last time you talked to your key suppliers, your key customers, et cetera? Why aren't we doing that as much as we should? That's it for the senior executive jobs. Is just as an example of the new skill set that's often needed as you make that kind of run up. But it's not the only problem that we see. The problem that you and I are describing, and the reason for this discussion, is that it can be very difficult for us to change behavior in a timely manner when that behavior has been very successful for us. And so, to give you another example that's different than this kind of rising up level is one of the places we work, a guy has created a company that's worth $20 million. And so this is a $20 million company. That's a huge deal. His parents are immigrants. He's first generation American. And, whatever, he's got, he drives multiple Teslas, Bahamas vacations, like the American dream, right? And yet in his industry, most organizations that have his ability are double the size. They're $40 million. And he cannot be convinced that he's small. We're trying to help him stop seeing all of he's seeing a company that's wildly successful, but that's getting in the way of him seeing a company that's half as big as it should be.
Well, I mean, it goes back to that research that I heard a million years ago on NPR, but never actually found it specifically, that talked about organizations that form in recessions. Tend to be
a little stronger.
The survivors.
Yeah.
Like they survive much longer than organizations in rich times because they had to build a really tight ship. And the problem with an organization that is built during affluent times is all you see is that you're making money and doing well, and you don't see how if you were put together tighter, you could be doing X more. Like, it's really hard to see what isn't there. And so all you see are the financial records that say, hey, I got a $20 million business, or business that grosses $20 million a year. I'm not sure which one it is. But it's harder to see if I did these other things or took this opportunity, I could have a 40 million because it's not tangible.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah, it's an interesting, it's the, Daniel Kahneman famously called it the what you see is all there is effect. So if you don't see it, it doesn't exist. Whereas that's, not all of reality. That's just a piece of it. But it gets in the way, makes it very hard. So, in that instance, in working with that person, it involved like talking to him at length about the other companies. Like, why do you think they're 40 million? Oh, well, they got lucky with these two clients. Okay. Why do you think this other company is 40 million? And well, their founder had these existing relationships and, trying to gently help the founder see that you can have a successful company and there can still be a lot more runway.
Well, and there are lessons in that. So if he looks at this company and he's like, they're 40 million because they landed those two clients, then the question is, do you have what you need for sales? And if you're looking at this other company, you're like, well, he had this great network. Okay, I understand you have the network that you have, but you could put future work into building it out to be better. But I understand you have the network that you have, but you can hire people with great networks.
Yeah.
And so, yes, those are explanations for why the people around you have something that you don't have, but that is information that maybe you don't. The organization either needs to make changes or you personally need to make changes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and that's this whole purpose of this discussion.
Right.
Is success slows down people's ability to change. I mean, this is a version of Clayton Christensen's innovator's dilemma of successful companies. I mean, I'll simplify it, but basically successful companies continue to exploit what's been working for them. And that paves the way for an upstart to come in and do something in a way that's fundamentally different and better. And then by the time the established company sees it, it's already too late. The upstart's able to capture that market share. They figure the way out and you're in trouble. One of the most talented people we know is a turnaround expert. And he's so wildly persuasive, he gets hired for all kinds of jobs that aren't turnarounds. Mm-hmm. And he will then, getting hired into a company, start implementing his turnaround playbook, which half of the companies he hired to aren't turnarounds. And so we have to coach this guy like, look, this isn't a turnaround. This is an established company. They're more or less firing all the cylinders. You're looking for, how do you extend this? What's the next big thing? Is there any areas of weakness you should be shoring up? Not lock, stock, and barrel transforming the company. But we've now watched him leave organizations because he can only implement. He's leaning on his incredible track record of turnaround success. And that's his playbook. That's what that's the tools he's bringing to the job, even though he's increasingly getting hired for different kinds of jobs. And it's hard to convince him that that doesn't work because he's like basically renowned for that working for him, right? Until it doesn't, right? So this is instructive to this conversation. We have the tendency, experts have the tendency to want to widen the domains that they're experts in and start dispensing advice everywhere. We work with a lot of physicians.
Yep.
And they're excellent at the human body. They're the best in the world, we would say, at understanding the human body. And so they'll think that they can start a brew pub. I'm a great doctor. Why can't I start a brew pub?
Or investments.
Yeah. Or I could be a stock picker. I'm a great doctor. I can be a stock picker.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fallacy of,
domain expertise. Getting out of your domain.
Well, yes, but I mean, like, you see how it gets there, right? Like, if you are used to being smart and being able to figure out things, which generally speaking, I would say doctors are smart and able to figure out things, and this would be the case for any expert. Like, you've spent a lot of time proving you can figure things out.
Yeah.
And the problem is that you start to think you can figure everything out, but actually, like, you look at experts and like, the expertise, I mean, this is why experts get made fun of. The expertise generally is in a particular domain.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. It takes a lot of effort and time to build the expertise in that domain. And if you jump to a different domain, you're going to have to spend that amount of time and effort on that domain. And you may not have the time if you're still serving the original domain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, musers. Now it's time for commercial break.
You need to call culture. Cindi can measure anything in terms of your organization's internal health. CULSURE. People love Cindi's survey. Measures the normal stuff that you would think, organizational engagement, but also a lot of stuff that you wouldn't. Where are your most influential people? Where are the communication blockages? What's the level of trust? What's the approachability of your key leaders? It is a comprehensive organizational assessment. People love it. It will tell you how your company is humming on the inside. And then Cindi will do a debrief. And usually she blows people's mind with the insights and the ability to help see things where you can make a few targeted, precise steps for a big gain. Culture.com, CULSURE, CULSURE.com. Call her. We're try to be on the alert for people who have been very successful and who are deploying those behaviors that they have a data bank and a memory bank of success in. And they're deploying it in a new role or in different circumstances, and it's not working anymore. And sometimes there are signals for when this is likely to happen. I think a lot about the analogy of if you raise kids. And we know there's enough of a timeline. We can see it. It's predictable. And so there's a time when we do goo goo gaga, and then there's a time when we do, now what did daddy say? And then there's a time when we're like, okay, what do you think? Right there. So we know that our conversation with them changes over the years. And that if I'm still doing goo goo gaga when they're 20 years old, that's not going to work. But at work, it can be a little sneakier. Sometimes you get a big marker. I got a new job. I should be doing things maybe a little bit differently. This job is different. This company is different. What I used to do isn't working. But sometimes it's not. It sneaks up on you. Sometimes it's your boss has an epiphany and she wants to change things. And you're slow to see the way she's going and that she's actually serious because the epiphany happened to her, not to you.
Right.
But it's trickling down. And now you're going to have to change. And so it can sneak up on you and you're still deploying those old behaviors and it's not working. And you're like, well, but that's what got me here. And it's not, in the words of Marshall Goldsmith, who famously said, what got you here won't get you there. Wrote a book by that title. This you're needing a different set of skills now for the job that you're in. Something has changed.
I think also there's an identity component because
Sure.
I mean, we hear this all the time. Like, this is just who I am.
Yep.
And that is saying that this is your identity versus these are behaviors and skills that you're exhibiting.
Right.
And if you think about it as behaviors and skills that you're exhibiting, that's far more malleable than, well, this is just who I am.
Yeah.
And you're rejecting who I am. And that's much harder to get people to come out of.
Yeah, I think so. It's been a while, but you've gotten tangled up before with women in men's professions who basically had to be women doing in organizations that typically had a lot of men in them, whether that's IT, first responder, there are others.
Yeah.
Investment banking, I think, is still heavily men, finance. And so women often, and this is normal, where people,
You have to
minorities take on the majority.
Right. You have to try to fit in. And so you start taking on the other behaviors. And then when you get either into a new position outside of those, or you get into an organization that doesn't have that skew, or you get to a position where maybe the organization is that way, but the position isn't, then it's somewhat disconcerting for the people who are working with you that you are potentially exhibiting like the more masculine, in this case, more masculine behaviors.
Yeah. So it's a weird distortion of somebody who may have learned behaviors to survive, then succeeds with those behaviors to a point where you can't do that anymore.
They're getting the cues. What you're doing makes you a little bit different. Not bad, but you're different.
Yeah.
And it's different enough where, like, you're not gelling. And we need you to change. And there are a number of people who are like, well, I'm not going to change.
Right.
Because I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
And so as a result, then they don't gel with the people.
Yeah.
If you want to be in a company and they're giving you signals that what you're doing isn't working, you have to change.
Yeah, I agree that's the luxury we had. It's been a long time ago, but in some of the rural hospitals where we work, they had what's called meaningful use, which basically forced them to all go to electronic medical records. And that meant doctors could no longer do paper charts.
That's a big deal.
There were a non-trivial percentage of doctors who'd worked long enough and had enough saved up, and they were like, not doing it.
Yeah, see you later.
And they actually left. Not unlike COVID, where there were a number of baby boomers who were close to retirement and may have worked a little bit longer, but then they're like, hey, I'm gone. And because they could. I want to say two things about this. The purpose of this podcast is we're assuming that you're in an organization and you want to stay, and that you're going to want to change in response to feedback, good feedback,
right,
from multiple sources, that behaviors you used to do, that used to work for you and be part of your secret sauce, aren't working anymore.
Right. We're assuming that you want to stay and be successful, and to be successful.
Yeah.
In many, I mean, there are obviously lines, like there are some ethical lines that you may just decide, like, that is just absolutely not what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, if you want to stay and be successful, you probably have to look at your behaviors, and even your most successful behaviors, and sometimes I guess maybe even especially your most successful behaviors of the past, you have to really look at them, because right now you have a taken for granted assumption that this behavior is good. This behavior produces the results that I want. And it's when you wind up rising or switching organizations, and sometimes that goes together, you have to take those most successful behaviors and question the taken for granted assumption. Is this still working?
Yeah. Yep. I think so. It's easy to get tripped up, and we want to be open to feedback, especially this very particular kind. It's very unusual type where it's something that we've been good at before, and it's no longer serving us.
And I think the key to being open to that feedback is that when you're getting it, if your gut reaction is a sense of, well, this is who I am, and like you feel an element of rejection, then you are taking it from an identity standpoint. And if you step back for a second and you think about more broadly who you are, like all the other things and all the other ways that your identity fits with a particular group or organization, then you can see, okay, those behaviors aren't who I am. They're just what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a guy, it's been not that long ago, but he put in a full 20 years in the military and then came out and took a job as a civilian and then basically got fired, boom, boom, from 2 companies within probably a year and a half. And he was referred to us by a friend of ours because he was on his 3rd job, and like he was starting to get signs from the environment.
Right.
Like, you're about to get fired for his 3rd company. It's only been a year and a half. You know, you work for the Army for 20 years and now you can't work for, you're on your 3rd company in a year and a half. And the basic gist was he was just impossible to work with. And the reason was he was holding his civilian coworkers to a standard like they were in the Army, and things could move a little faster. And
they do more what you say, which that's a big...
Right.
I'm not saying everybody in the military does what they're told to do, but
it's
more likely.
Much more frequently.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this was a problem for the guy. Obviously he didn't want this type of velocity of jobs. And it required us basically, as insane as this sounds, it required 2 things. One is identity, right? He needed to actually
let go of that old identity.
And he needed to become a civilian and accept his new circumstances.
Yeah, and that transition doesn't happen all at once.
Right.
Because it's too hard mentally. You can't leap from being 100% military in this case to something that's its opposite, civilian,
it's different.
It's different enough. It's significant. It's not opposite.
It's no different than any sports player,
right? Coming out
sports and having to
come back to a somewhat normal life.
And I don't know how different it is from somebody deciding after raising kids at home that they want to go back. It's
a significant difference.
Yeah.
It's not
an iterative.
There's like a whole jump.
I'm not going from running a department to running a region.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a jump that you're making in terms of career, in this case. But you're not going to make that jump from an identity standpoint. Like, you have to start the transition on the dimensions that you can start it on. Okay, I never liked these dimensions in the military, and civilian life, I get to I get to do these things differently.
Yeah.
Okay, that fits me better. And you start the transition of fitting into, by dimension, this next identity. And then you can move on to the harder ones. Because there's going to be stuff that you really liked about being in the military, for this example, or being on a sports team. I mean, you know, hard work, but you got all the fame, right? And so there are going to be things that you liked, and you're going to have to not give direct replacements, but it's going to have to be a replacement that is fulfilling in a similar way. Like, you're not going to get probably the same level of fame, even as a famous athlete in civilian life. Like, I think, you know, how many times do we hear about Michael Jordan now? I mean, he's still one of the ones who's actually had longevity, but it's not like when he was playing basketball. And he figured out ways, it seems that way to me. I'm not an expert, but it seems that way to me, that he's figured out ways to find other things that are satisfying in his life with, you know, being a former basketball player.
Yeah, it's like we always say, be more than just a firefighter, be more than just a doctor, be more than just a CEO.
Yeah. So when you're making a huge leap, or you're giving up a dimension that has been really personally valuable to you, you can run the experiments and see that you don't actually fall apart as a human being by giving it up. You can start by watching actually other people who you think are enough like you, or like enough like what you'd like to be, and watch them not have those behaviors because they're successful in the organization. And that can be your first test run. And then the next one is you can experiment with actually not doing that behavior and realize, oh, people will actually listen to what I have to say, and I don't have to nag them to do it.
Yeah, it's good insight. Look for somebody doing the opposite of what you're doing and being successful as a
bridge.
Case. Yeah. This is actually working for this person. I know this person. I respect this person.
Right. Because you're trying to get over your fear. Like, you want to be successful in this organization. You're relying on the behaviors that always made you successful. You're prone to do it more when you're afraid because it's new. And so you want evidence that you don't need that behavior? Okay. We'll look around.
Yeah, it's good insight. Yeah. That's the purpose of this podcast. The behaviors that used to be successful, it can change. Our situations change quickly. Sometimes it's decisive. It's a new job. It's a new company. It's a new boss. Sometimes it's a little more under the radar. But when the environment starts giving us signals, one of the hardest signals for us to absorb is when a previously successful behavior isn't working anymore.
Especially if that behavior is part of our identity.
Yep. Fortunately, there are many ways to begin to shed old behaviors that used to work that are beginning to get in the way. And Cindi talked about a number. And when in doubt, the question you're trying to ask yourself is, you think of your change as an ongoing evolution, not a series of disruptive events.
Yeah, not leaps.
Yeah. And this is my next turn of the wheel. I've been not the same person you were 10 years ago.
And think about it with excitement. Like, these changes are an opportunity. Yes, you're going to shed some of the things that maybe you liked in the past, but hopefully it's to gain becoming this person you want to be in the future.
Yeah.
And the shedding is, you know, just like a dog losing its coat. It's necessary.
Yep. Yeah. I like it.
All right. Thanks for joining us today on The Muse, and we will see you next time, hopefully. And in the meantime, we appreciate stars, likes, subscriptions, comments.
Do it.
If you see it, do it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Management Muse. We are a podcast / YouTube channel that we hope is entertaining and educational. If you are on YouTube, we would appreciate you subscribing and maybe leaving a comment and a like. If you are on any of the podcasts listening to this, we would appreciate stars, following, comments, all the good stuff. We want to say thank you to Christina, Sarah, and Rebecca, and then, of course, everybody at Design at Work. And then just as a last-minute reminder, we also want to mention that we are management and communication professionals working in the field, but also have degrees that back us in science. All that being said, we are talking in generalities on this podcast. We do not actually know your particular situation. So proceed with common sense and maybe a little bit of experimentation on your end. And we hope that you make the world a more beautiful place by making work a more enjoyable place. See you next time on Management Muse.